My guest today is Dr. Andrea Pennington, and I have invited Dr. Pennington because she helps to empower women to see themselves, to see ourselves really as perfect, infinite human beings, and to really offer our gifts, our feminine gifts, to the world and to ourselves. She has been featured on numerous publications. You've probably seen her in Dr. Oz, on Oprah. She's given a TED Talk. And so she is a longevity medical doctor and really just helps women to live more orgasmically. And today we're going to talk about how we can really increase our sensual vitality and what that means. So she is one of the founders of this revolution called Sensual Vitality, and I'm so excited that you're here. So welcome, Dr. Andrea. I'm going to call you Dr. Andrea for this interview. That's okay with you.
Thank you, Monique. It's so good to connect with you.
So before we begin, tell us a little bit about your story, a little bit more about your background and how you came to this point of wanting to help women live more orgasmically, live and really increase their sensual vitality.
Well, as a medical doctor, I specialize in longevity medicine, as you said. Mm-hmm. And what I noticed in my clients who were 40 and up was there was a drop in their sex drive and their libido. And what I noticed in the culture is most of us just accept that as normal. Mm-hmm. We think that, oh yeah, things are going to just go down with age. They go down with our hormones. Yeah. But that's not true. Our sensuality and our sexuality does not have a time limit.
Yeah.
When you really study anti-aging medicine, we are meant to enjoy our intimate relationships all the way into our 8th and 9th decades of life. Mm-hmm. And so you mentioned Dr. Oz. I was on the Dr. Oz show, and I mentioned to him that for my patients, I ask them to have 3 orgasms per week. Now that's a minimum. So of course, after the show, I got all these people emailing me saying, wait, is 3 the minimum or the maximum? And, mm-hmm. and well, what could be blocking mine? And it really opened up a dialogue, to be honest, Monique, about our sensuality in a different way, in a way that's linked to our health, our physical health, our emotional health, and most importantly, the health of our relationships. Because even though everyone talks about the statistic that the number one cause of divorce is financial problems, right up on there is also sexual problems.
Yeah, absolutely.
And many times, if the sex is working, you can figure out the finances.
I agree.
So I want couples to be able to maintain that intimate bond and connection to keep our relationships together and ultimately our families together.
Awesome.
And sexuality is a part of life. It should be healthy. It should be fun. And it should be frequent. Yeah. So that's what really led me into sharing it on a wider scale in the media and now with the Sensual Vitality Revolution.
Awesome. So let's talk about what you mean by sensuality, because a lot of people really oftentimes equate that with sexuality. But tell us more about how you define it and what that means really for the alluring woman.
Yes. So when I talk about sensuality and our sensual vitality, that means we're tapping into and turning on our senses. So we have our sense of sight, our sense of touch, our sense of hearing and feeling and smelling and tasting. And when all of those senses are turned on, then everything is a turn on. Yeah. We don't have to, as women, compartmentalize our sensuality only to our sexy time with our partner. What I'm asking women to do is let your senses turn you on so that you're really present to all of the cues in your environment that could be erotic turn-ons.
Yeah.
Because many of my clients were telling me, yeah, by the time I get home at night, I ain't thinking about sex.
Yeah.
They're saying, by the time the kids are in bed and everything's cleaned up, I either want to go to sleep or, watch another episode of Scandal,
Right.
So they were telling me that they weren't prioritizing it, or if they did leave room for sexy time, they weren't turned on. Mm-hmm. And that's because we as women get so focused in our day-to-day tasks. We're running companies, we're running the household, we're taking care of the kids, but we're not always tuned into the body and our senses. And when a woman is turned on, and I don't just mean sexually, but when she's turned on and she's tuned into her world, she's more alive. Mm-hmm. She is more vibrant. She is more alluring. Mm-hmm. And what I've seen with my clients is when you turn on this sensuality, you are more effective, not only in the bedroom, but in the boardroom. Because what I've noticed with many of the high-powered superwomen in America is a lot of us felt like we had to tone down our feminine allure because we had to seem like we were confident and competent to compete for those big CEO positions or whatever in companies. And unfortunately, the pendulum has swung too far. Women are so dialed into their masculine side that they're losing that feminine allure. And what we're realizing now is the world needs feminine values in our leadership, in our families. That's why I am so passionate about helping women really tune into their senses and especially their feminine allure.
You know what? This is so good because when you talk about sensuality and really using our senses, I mean, just being able to apply this to our lives, because that's what this series is all about, helping women to live a more beautiful life. And so something as simple as, even during the holidays, and I was with my family and I said, hey, let's set the table. And they're like, oh, I don't want to set the table. I don't want to have to do dishes, this and that. And I'm like, okay, I will help you. But let's set the table, because it turns the experience from eating and just smashing the food to a dining experience, right? We just don't want to eat, we want to dine. We want to enjoy each other's company. And I can remember going to an event where the host had chocolate covered strawberries. And so she and her team had passed out strawberries to everyone. And you could just take note of the women who ate the strawberry as soon as they had gotten it versus the waiting to hear the instruction, because we were to interact with it. We were to smell, like just experience and be with the strawberry and taste it and really savor rather than just like smashing it. So that's a part of the difference, and that could be really an example of adding more sensual vitality to our lives.
That's it, precisely. And what happens when people eat that way, when you eat more mindfully and consciously and savor it, you actually allow all these little chemicals to go to the brain that make us feel good and satisfied. So you tend to eat less. So if we would eat that ice cream or that chocolate or whatever the thing is we so crave, but we eat it present and mindfully and allow it to really hit our senses, we will be more satisfied. And that would help out a lot with this whole obesity epidemic.
Absolutely, absolutely. So tell me, Dr. Andrea, before I want to go, into talking about your book, but how can we as women become a part of this revolution? What are some simple practices and tips that you can share that we can use to live more orgasmically right now and increase our own sensual vitality?
Well, it starts with a decision. It starts with the decision to sort of look in your own life and see, what are you really not happy about? And be honest with that and see if you can deliberately turn things around by investigating the alternatives. Like, what is the alternative? Instead of going with the status quo, where can I make a difference? And, one of the things we've done is we've assembled a group that we call the Sensual Vitality Entourage. Just check us out on Facebook. I know you have the link here. And we're just a group of women who can positively support one another as we go through this transition, because it is a transition. When you move back into a holistic lifestyle and, getting out of your comfort zone, you need support. And that's what we want to do for women.
Tell us more about your book, because I know that you have the book in this car. I wrote it down. Oh, the Orgasm Prescription for Women.
Yes.
So tell me what really inspired you to write that book, and tell us more about it.
Well, it did come from all of the response I got after being on the Dr. Oz show and telling people to have 3 orgasms a week. I ended up doing focus groups and teaching seminars, and women were asking me the same questions, like, how do I get my desire back? How do I boost my libido? How do I have more reliable orgasms? And I'm kind of a science nerd. I admit it, and admitted that on the Oprah show. I'm like, yeah, I'm a nerd. I love the science of vitality and our brain chemistry. And with my training in Chinese medicine, I was able to help people understand that you don't have to settle for anything less than an exciting, vibrant life. In China, the women value their sexuality and actually see it as a way to prolong life and encourage longevity. And so putting all of this together in this book, The Orgasm Prescription for Women, is allowing me to create a 21-day program for, heightened pleasure, deeper intimacy, and erotic bliss. It's allowing me to share mindfulness techniques like we've been talking about, how to become more present and tuned into our senses, tuned into our body, so that rather than having to wait for someone to get us off, we know what we need and what we like. And it's like what you say about having that invitation instead of obligation. We can invite someone into our sensual space as a partner in a romantic and sensual dance, rather than, oh, I'm waiting on him to do this and this and this. No, this is us coming in as beautiful partners to share in our sensuality. So that's what led me to write the book. I'm super excited about the launch. So many little tricks and bonuses and downloads, and a workshop here in Monte Carlo. So it's an exciting time.
Well, this is going to be so beautiful. I want to go back to something that you said about when you what you notice based on your practice in Chinese medicine is that just a lot of Chinese women own their sensuality and their sexuality. Tell me more about what that means and what that looks like to really own that part of ourselves.
Yeah, it's nice when you go back 2,000, 3,000 years to ancient China, or even in India where the Kama Sutra came from. But when we look in China and we look at the Taoist sexual practices, they have these women who were considered the courtesans, and they were sought after, not in a prostitutional sort of way, but they had the secrets to long life, and sensual pleasure was a part of that. And so when you recognize from a cultural perspective that sex is part of life and is part of a good life, there was no taboo associated that came along with, like the American puritanical system. And that's what fascinated me. You saw these women who were glowing and basking in their feminine allure, into their 80s and 90s. And it's like normal.
Yeah. So what are some of the blocks then that you see in it, outside of the basic, oh, I'm too tired, or what, I'm just tired, really, my husband got me in the mood, I just don't really feel like it. Are there, maybe this is not, maybe it's just not that deep, but what are some of the common blocks that you see to women not living orgasmically, not having orgasms, and not really wanting to tap into that sensual side of themselves, of ourselves, really?
Mm-hmm. Well, the first, as a medical doctor, I always go through the medical concerns. So, of course, diabetes, heart disease, these things that can both decrease blood flow and block the nerve conduction of our lady parts going up to the brain. So once you get the medical things out of the way, certainly someone with a history of cancer or any neurological problem, stress, interpersonal issues, those again are kind of the common ones. But the ones that I've found the most interesting and even challenging are the mental hangups. See, what the Kinsey researchers kind of brought to the world of sexual health many years ago is this understanding that there are turn-ons and turn-offs in the brain. And if your brain is not turning you on or allowing you to be turned on, then you're not going to have an orgasm. So the turn-ons, what are the turn-ons? Well, these are, a gesture from your beloved. It could be a sexy text message. It could be seeing his bulging muscles. Any of those things that are cues for turning you on, or he's pampering you, takes you out to dinner, those kinds of cues. But what are the turn-offs? Now, sure, for some of us, it's a messy house. We have too many things to do. We're just like, we ain't got time. But the reality is there are so many other hidden turn-offs in our brain that in our subconscious that either come from our social programming, interpersonal difficulties. Many of the women that I saw had a history of sexual abuse, and any sort of trauma is already going to have the brain in more of a fight-flight mode than a receptive, snuggly and cuddly mode. And so these are the kinds of things that I've had to help women kind of uncover and get to the root of. And then I think the other really, really common one is not feeling confident in our bodies. There's so much body shaming that we do to ourselves. You know, yes, we compare ourselves to what we see on TV or in magazines, but so much of what we do to ourselves is in our own minds. And once you become more conscious of it and aware of it, then you can start to challenge it and start to learn to love yourself. Because, you know, it's funny, I have to tell this story. I was working in a women's health clinic. And one of the things I was doing was counseling women after pregnancy or to prevent pregnancy. So we were talking about STDs and contraception. And it was amazing on the days that we had women coming in after they've had kids and now they wanted to talk about birth control or have a checkup. So I would see some women who were big girls and they just kind of had this natural ease. And I remember talking to them about sex and they didn't seem all closed up. And you would think, oh, well, these are the girls that are bigger than what we normally see on TV or what is the concept of beauty. And yet they were so comfortable. And when I asked a few of them, you know, we kind of, hey, when you're talking about sex, you got to open it up. Yeah. One of the things that we heard was, honey, my man loves my booty, or he loves my little rolls. And once you kind of recognize that when you're really connected to someone who gets you at your essence and loves you, they're going to love you unconditionally. And when you can feel that good in your body about yourself and know that you are lovable no matter what, that allows you to bring your energy into your intimate relationship and fully enjoy it. And so this issue of body confidence is another little sticking point that I'm really excited to bring a lot of clarity around through the book and through the workshops.
Yeah, awesome. I want to go back because I also know that you are a sex positive educator. And so one of the things that I heard you say too, Andrea, is that we have to take ownership of our lady parts, ownership when we're being intimate with our partners. And so I remember even listening to an audio or a book or something. It was really the woman saying how she has to take ownership in the bedroom for her own body. Like that's not something that she leaves for her husband to do. Because essentially what can happen is that can cause a lot of resentment. We don't feel satisfied and we're putting on him like, you know, you can't do it anyway, brother. You know, and just that can create a whole consequence of things that we, you know, just because we didn't take ownership.
Yeah.
Because we haven't been taught. You talked about the differences of how, I guess, sexuality is seen here in America. But tell me more. So I say all that to say, let's go back and tell me what is sex positive education or sex positive, like what brought you into that realm? And then how can that be useful for women to use more of their allure in the bedroom?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, in the world of sex education and sex therapy, being sex positive does not mean that you're telling people to go out and hedonistically and indiscriminately just get their freak on. No, being sex positive means recognizing that sex is a part of life. It's a healthy aspect of our lives. And we've got to get away from the shoulds and the shame. And so when people feel like they should be like their girlfriend down the street, or they should enjoy their sensuality like what they see on television, that starts to create shame. If we're not like these other people, then we feel like something's wrong with me. I must be broken. And when you aren't teaching women in particular that we need to love ourselves, we can assert ourselves, to ask for what we want, and to be very clear when we don't want something. That's what it means to be sex positive, is to teach people that there's no shame. If you are into a little kink, if you like the 50 Shades, or you want to be a master or a slave, that is okay. And in fact, it's pretty normal. Yeah. And if you're fantasizing and you're thinking, oh my gosh, am I a bad person? No. 8 people out of 10 will fantasize, even if they're in a happy relationship. So this is what being sex positive is about. It's about letting people know that they're normal, they're healthy, and that you need to take ownership for what you love and enjoy. And don't worry about the rest of the world out there.
So so first of all, I want to go back because I like what you said about get away from the should and the shame. Oh my goodness, that's so true. And when I hear women say that, I always tell them it's not about what you should do or what you have to do. What can you do, number one? And what do you want to do, number two? So we should be asking us, we can ask ourselves
yes.
those questions instead. So here's my next question for you, Dr. Andrea. Do you also help women to be able to express themselves in the bedroom, to tell, be able to feel comfortable about talking to their partners about what they want and what makes them feel good? Is that a part of your workshop?
Absolutely. And it'll be, in the 21-day orgasm prescription, because communication is a huge part of intimacy, right? When we start dating someone and we go on a date, we can talk for hours and we want to ask them every little thing about where they grew up and all this stuff. So why shouldn't we be talking about sex and what we like and what turns us on and what we enjoy? If our partner came to us and said, "Oh, honey, I want to take you out to dinner. Do you like Italian?" And if you said, "No, I don't really like Italian, but I'd love to have sushi tonight," then that would be totally acceptable. Why shouldn't you be able to have that same ease to say, "You know what, I really like this. If you do a little more of that, I would enjoy that." Or to say, "Honey, you know what you did last night? That was spot on." And to do the same, to ask, "You know what, honey, I heard this Dr. Andrea talking about stuff we like that we may think our partner doesn't like. Tell me 3 things that you think I might be shocked by." So we give people conversation starters so that they can demystify this whole experience with talking about our sensuality. Yeah. And I find that helps a great deal, because if you don't tell your partner what you want and what you like, you ain't got no business getting resentful and upset. Yeah. And that means we also have to be willing to pleasure ourselves.
Yeah, that's true. I like it because it's really about the positive reinforcement, tell more of what you like. And like you said, just to kind of conversation starters that really demystifies and just become more curious. But some women might be like, "Oh, that's what you like? Oh, I didn't know you like that." So we have to be prepared for the responses too, and also suspend judgment. That's the main thing, is to really learn how to suspend that judgment. And that really creates more openness, more conversation, more intimacy, right? And not just even sexually, but intimacy as in connection with, different partners.
That you bring up a great point, because a lot of people say, "Oh, I'd rather not find out, so I just don't want to ask." But the reality is, for many people, if they're not satisfied in their sexual relationships and they feel afraid to tell their partner, but then some new person comes along at the office or that you see at the gym all the time, and there's less of that fear, that sparks a lot of people to go down the road of having an affair. So even though you may be a little worried about what you're going to find out, chances are it's going to lead to something positive in your relationship.
Before we close, just tell me more about, just to kind of sum it all up for the women who are listening, and for women who, want to add more allure. I know you said that means living more, having a wholesome, a wholly integrated life. Tell me more about what that means, and how, women who want to tap more into their allure can tap into that, living wholly in an integrated life.
Yeah. Well, when we are a complete and whole being, it means that we are using our mind, our body, our soul, all of our talents, and yes, all of our body in this beautiful game of life. And so what the practice of Chinese medicine has brought to me in all of these years is a real clarity that when our energy is flowing, and the Chinese call it qi, when that qi is flowing, we can recover from illness, we can fight illness, we can stay vital and healthy for years to come. But when that energy gets blocked or stagnated, that's when dis-ease comes about. That's when illness comes about. And so in Chinese medicine, what do we do with acupuncture? What do you do with Qigong or Tai Chi? The whole thing is about getting that energy moving. And what we're inviting women to do is to do that for yourself. You can become a master of your own vital life force energy by allowing it to move and flow. And it doesn't mean you're going to be turning into a sex pot. It's not that. It's about turning on and being a full, alive woman.
Yeah, because that's really what femininity is. Feminine, I've been reading, is that life force, it's that life,
yes,
that life energy. And what's really interesting too, Dr. Andrea, because I had a client who was, after our work together, she talked about she had done energy work, and I was curious about that. I had never really heard of it, but she told me that that's something that she can foresee me doing. So I started Googling and trying to find out more information about it, about body work, about healing, energy workers is what they called. And so I remember there was one gentleman, and I don't really know much about him or his story, but he talked about the human body and having energy life force. And he had given an example of really how there could be a cord just like this, and how it has this electromagnetic field and energy force. And of course, I'm not a scientist, but he talked about how it goes around like this. And if this thing can have energy in it, why not the human body?
Of course.
So that just really, really resonated with me so well, and I have to look at it again. But it really piqued my curiosity and wanting to learn more about energy work, and that's something that I could, put into my own practice. So thank you for reinforcing and mentioning that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's go. So for the ladies who are interested in taking the next step with you, I know that you have a couple gifts. You have a free report, and then you also have another ebook, I believe. So tell us about that for the women who want to take the next step.
Yes. So for the ladies who are having a hard time achieving orgasm, I have a special report called The Top 5 Reasons You're Not Having an Orgasm and How to Overcome Them. So just click on the link and you can download this special report. And some of the stuff may seem obvious, but there's going to be a couple surprises on the list for you. I always offer plenty of resources for women to tap into this wisdom and start making little tweaks that they can benefit from right away. So I invite you to take a look at that.
That concludes this interview with Dr. Andrea. Thank you so much, Dr. Andrea, for being here. We appreciate your own sensual vitality and really the work that you're doing in the world, which I think is just totally awesome. And that's why I invited you to speak. So I really just want to salute you and acknowledge you and really acknowledge your presence. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's been a blessing and an honor to connect with you, and I love what you're doing. So keep up the good work.